Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is Pro-Revenge story. For some reason, heaven knows why, I thought I'd trust a small local credit union with some of my money. Last Tuesday, when my card didn't work at the ATM, I went inside the branch for help and a teller named Marco gave me a special code to use. This will deduct cash directly from your account, he explained with a smile. It's a feature all our members can use. This wasn't special treatment, just a standard service they offered. Fast forward a few days and it seems the bank's system flagged my account for review because of some accounting error where they were late to deduct my balance. I didn't go into overdraft or anything like that, it was just a minor mistake on their part. And still, for over a month all my funds were locked, and whenever I called customer support, I was given snarky responses. "Sir, these things take time," one representative named Brenda told me with an audible eye roll in her voice. "We have procedures we need to follow." Another time, a different rep named Kevin hinted they didn't like my foreign-sounding last name. "Your name is unusual. Sometimes these verification processes take longer with international customers," he said with a pause that spoke volumes. When I spoke to my family back home in early September to vent about this situation, my younger cousin Misha came up with an idea. "Why don't you use that Russian service that pays people a few Russian rubles to post whatever you ask them on social media?" Misha suggested. "1 ruble is approximately 1 US cent, so it's super cheap." "Would that actually work?" I asked skeptically. "Trust me," Misha replied. "Companies hate bad publicity more than anything." The service worked like magic. The website even had options to choose between American-looking profiles and other locales. After spending the most well-spent $3 of my life in crafting some AI prompts, the credit union's social media was flooded with hundreds of complaints. "Terrible service at Valley Trust Credit Union," one post read. "Been waiting weeks for them to unfreeze my account," said another. "Do they discriminate against people with foreign names? Asking for a friend?" a third one questioned. I'm sure this got to the right ears because on the same day, literally within hours, the bank's call center manager personally called me. "Hello, this is Diane Thompson, call center manager at Valley Trust," she said, her voice dripping with concern that wasn't there during my previous calls. "We understand your frustration with the extended review of your account, and we want to make this right. I've been trying to access my own money for a month," I reminded her. "Yes, and we deeply apologize for that inconvenience," Diane continued. "Even if you don't want your account with us anymore, we're ready to initialize a transfer of your full balance plus a $50 compensation to any other bank of your choosing. Would that help resolve this matter?" Problem solved. They probably realized there was no way to link this social media activity to me and hence hinted at ending things on a positive note. Too bad I can't tell the Russian bots to remove their posts. That will be someone else's problem now. "I appreciate the gesture," I told Diane before hanging up. "I'll take the transfer option." As I ended the call, I couldn't help but smile at how quickly they'd moved once their reputation was on the line. Money talks, but bad reviews scream. The next one is an entitled people story. I never thought I'd have a run-in with an HOA Karen, mainly because I don't live in an HOA community. But here's the thing about owning a commercial property that shares a border with a residential HOA neighborhood. Sometimes their crazy spills over into your world. A few years back, I bought a small strip mall property at an estate sale. The previous owner had let it go to seed, but I saw potential. It had 5 retail spaces, and most importantly, it came with a massive parking lot that could easily fit 40 vehicles. The location was prime, right on a busy street with great visibility. I spent months renovating the spaces and got them all rented out to small businesses, a coffee shop, a dry cleaner, a nail salon, a pizza place, and a used bookstore. The parking lot was the real selling point for my tenants. In our area, parking is a nightmare, so having dedicated spaces was huge. I kept the lot well maintained, repaved it, painted fresh lines, and even installed decent lighting. As the owner, I parked my truck there every day while I handled property management tasks and maintenance issues. Now here's where it gets interesting. The strip mall backed up to a residential neighborhood called Meadowbrook Heights. Fancy name for a collection of cookie-cutter houses built in the 70s. They had an HOA that mostly kept to themselves. There was a fence separating our properties, and for the first couple of years we had zero interaction. Everyone seemed to understand where the property lines were. Then the HOA got a new president. I'll call her the president, though everyone else had less polite names for her. She was retired, had too much time on her hands, and apparently decided that her life's mission was to exert control over everything within a half-mile radius of her house. Within a month of taking over, she'd sent violation notices to half the neighborhood for absurd things like wrong shade of beige on shutters or mailbox posts being 2 inches too tall. I first encountered her on a Tuesday morning. I'd parked my truck in my usual spot near the back of the lot where I could easily access the dumpster area and utility panels. I was up on a ladder fixing a light fixture when I heard someone shouting. The president had let herself through the fence gate and was marching across my parking lot like she owned the place. She was waving a clipboard and pointing at my truck. She informed me that my vehicle was in violation of the community standards and needed to be moved immediately. I climbed down from the ladder and explained that this was private property, a commercial parking lot that I owned, and I could park wherever I wanted. She didn't care. According to her, my truck was an eyesore that could be seen from some of the houses in her neighborhood, and it was bringing down their property values. She claimed that even though it was technically on my property, it still violated the HOA's aesthetic guidelines because it was visible from the residential area. She actually used the phrase visual pollution. My truck, for context, is a regular Ford F-150. Not lifted, not modified, not painted in crazy colors. Just a normal white work truck that I used for hauling supplies and tools. Apparently, this was deeply offensive to her sensibilities. I told her again that the HOA had no authority over my commercial property. She responded by threatening to file a complaint with the city, claiming my business was creating a nuisance. I knew this was nonsense, but I also knew that dealing with frivolous city complaints was a headache I didn't need. She said if I didn't move my truck away from the back area where it could be seen from the residential properties, she would make my life difficult. She'd file complaints, she'd organize the HOA to protest, she'd do whatever it took. The way she said it made it clear she was used to people caving to her demands. Here's where I made my decision. I could fight her, explain property rights, maybe even get a lawyer involved. Or I could maliciously comply in a way that would teach her a lesson about making demands without understanding the full situation. I told her fine. I'd move my truck from that spot. She looked triumphant, made a note on her clipboard, and marched back through the fence. The next day, I moved my truck exactly as she requested. I took it from the back corner spot where it had been barely visible through the fence and parked it right in the front row of the parking lot, directly in one of the prime spots near the coffee shop entrance. But I didn't stop there. See, I'd been planning to expand my business anyway. I owned 2 other work trucks that I kept at a storage facility across town because I didn't need them every day. I brought both of them over and parked them in the front row too. 3 white trucks taking up 3 of the most visible parking spaces in the entire lot. My tenants started complaining within hours. The coffee shop owner was upset that customers couldn't park as easily. The nail salon owner mentioned that clients were grumbling about the reduced parking. I explained the situation and assured them it was temporary, and they understood once they heard about the HOA president's demands, but it got better. I also owned a small commercial trailer that I used for hauling larger equipment. Normally, I kept it hitched to one of the trucks at the storage facility. I brought that over too and parked it in another prime spot, taking up almost 2 spaces. The president noticed within a day. She came storming back through the fence, this time even more furious. She demanded to know what I was doing, why I'd added more vehicles instead of getting rid of the one. I calmly explained that I'd done exactly what she asked. She'd told me to move my truck from the back area where it could be seen from the residential properties. I had moved it. She never specified where I should move it to, and as the owner of the parking lot, I was free to park my vehicles wherever I wanted on my own property. The front row was technically more convenient for me anyway. She sputtered and turned red. She said this wasn't what she meant, that I was being deliberately difficult, that the trucks were now even more of an eyesore because they were front and center on the busy street. I asked if she wanted me to move them back to the rear of the lot where they'd been originally. She realized the trap and couldn't say yes without admitting her first demand had been stupid. Instead, she insisted I needed to remove all the trucks from the property entirely. I explained that wasn't going to happen. These were work vehicles for my business. I needed them on site. I owned the parking lot, paid property taxes on it, and had every legal right to park there. If she had a problem with it, she was welcome to file whatever complaints she wanted, but I was confident that no city ordinance prohibited a business owner from parking work vehicles in their own commercial parking lot. She threatened to get the city involved again. I told her to go ahead. I'd already checked the zoning laws and building codes. I was completely in compliance. Over the next week, she made good on her threat. She filed 3 separate complaints with the city's code enforcement office. Each time, an inspector came out, looked at the situation, and told her there was no violation. My property was zoned commercial. I had the right number of parking spaces for my tenants, and there was no ordinance against parking work vehicles in a commercial lot. But the president wasn't done. She organized a group of HOA residents to start shopping at competing businesses instead of my tenants. She posted on the neighborhood Facebook group about the unsightly commercial vehicles and tried to organize a boycott. Most of her neighbors ignored her because they liked the coffee shop and the convenience of the other businesses. A few residents did join her campaign, though. They'd walk past the strip mall and make loud comments about how terrible it looked. One guy actually stood in the parking lot filming the trucks, saying he was gathering evidence for a lawsuit. I told him he was on private property and needed to leave. The whole situation might have continued escalating, except the president made a critical mistake. In her zeal to find something to nail me with, she started researching the property records. That's when she discovered something I'd been waiting for her to figure out. When I bought the strip mall, the sale had included not just the building and the main parking lot, but also a narrow strip of land that extended along the fence line. This strip had originally been part of the commercial property, but had been let to grow wild with bushes and weeds. The previous owner had never maintained it. The HOA had apparently been using part of this strip for years without realizing it wasn't their property. They'd built a small playground area that technically encroached about 15 feet onto my land. Nothing major, and I'd never cared enough to make an issue of it. The neighborhood kids used it wasn't hurting anything, and I figured being a good neighbor meant not sweating the small stuff. The president found the property survey and realized her precious HOA playground was on my land. I knew the moment she discovered this because she showed up at the strip mall looking pale and worried. She tried a different approach this time, much more conciliatory. She explained about the playground and asked if we could work something out. Maybe she could stop complaining about my trucks if I'd let the playground situation slide. I reminded her that she'd already filed multiple city complaints against me, tried to organize a boycott of my tenants, and had been generally making my life miserable for weeks. All because I had the audacity to park my own vehicles in my own parking lot. I told her I wanted the fence moved to the actual property line within 30 days, or I'd start charging the HOA rent for the use of my land. The cost of moving the fence and rebuilding the playground on their actual property would be significant, probably $15,000 to $20,000. The HOA's annual budget was barely enough to cover basic maintenance and their newsletter. She asked what it would take to make this go away. I said I wanted a written apology delivered to each of my tenants for the boycott attempt, a public post on the neighborhood Facebook group acknowledging that my parking lot was private property and I had every right to park there, and a promise to never contact me or my tenants again with frivolous complaints. She agreed to everything. Within a week, I had the apologies, the Facebook post, and a signed agreement that the HOA would stay in their lane going forward. In exchange, I agreed to let them keep the playground where it was and promised not to charge rent. I moved my trucks back to their normal storage facility and went back to parking just my daily driver in the back corner where it had always been. My tenants were relieved. Their customers came back, and life returned to normal. The president resigned from the HOA board a few months later. I heard through the grapevine that the other board members had been furious with her for nearly costing the HOA thousands of dollars over a petty parking dispute. Apparently, some of the homeowners had threatened to sue her personally if she'd forced the playground situation. The whole experience taught me a valuable lesson about malicious compliance. Sometimes the best way to deal with an unreasonable demand is to follow it so literally that the person making the demand realizes how stupid it was in the first place. And it definitely pays to know exactly where your property lines are. The next one is a petty revenge story. So this has been driving me insane for like 3 months now. My neighbor parks his massive truck juiced enough over the edge of my driveway that I can technically still get out, but I have to do this ridiculous multi-point turn every single morning. I've asked him about it twice. First time he was like, "Oh, my bad," but then kept doing it. Second time, he literally just goes, "There's still enough room though," and walked back inside like, dude, come on. Anyway, last Tuesday, I see him outside doing yard work and his truck is in its usual spot. So I parked my car directly behind it in the street, not blocking his driveway or anything illegal, just making it so he'd have to do some weird maneuvers to back out. Sure enough, 20 mins later, there's knocking on my door. He's all annoyed asking me to move my car. I just smiled real big and said, "I mean, there's still room, you just gotta do a few extra turns to get out." The look on his face, LMAO. He hasn't parked anywhere near my driveway since the next one is a malicious compliance story. Long ago, I was dumb enough to rent a house within the control of an HOA. I have since learned better. This property was managed by a company called City I lived in. Properties they had purchased the house within the HOA and rented to us, but given that I wasn't actually in the HOA, I was just a renter, it became a really convoluted mess very quickly. We were told that we would need to adhere to the HOA guidelines, but we couldn't talk to the HOA directly, nor would we be able to receive a copy of the rules, but that it wasn't that serious. Most of their tenants didn't ever hear from them. Should have said no right then, but I was young and dumb. The day I arrived at the property to move my stuff in, I was informed by my landlord that I was being fined $100 for my trash cans being visible from the street. Apparently, because my trash can was delivered by the city 2 days prior to a place I didn't have access to, it was my responsibility to have driven across town and broken into the backyard to move the trash cans. The first infraction is a warning they never passed. On the second is $100. They said I was responsible for it, especially after the warning I literally never received. Then they told me that they would only accept payment in person going forward, even though my deposit and first month's rent were paid online, and it must be through a money order in person. Then they informed me the Office 4, the city I lived in, properties which I'd never been to, is actually a 2-hour drive away, totally not in the city I lived in. I told them this is my first day in, I got the keys an hour ago, there's no way I could have done this correctly. Surely it could be explained to the HOA that this couldn't be my fault. They said no, I couldn't talk to the HOA because I wasn't a member, couldn't see the rules I was supposed to follow because the HOA only allows copies for members. Then they pointed me to a single line in the rental agreement that said I would follow the rules. After far more back and forth than should be required for something so ridiculous, we came to an agreement that they would cover the fine, but for some reason it was impossible to waive the record of the infractions, and I would be halfway to eviction on day one. All of it counted against me, but they'd do the $100. I asked if there were any more rules that I needed to be aware of up front since I couldn't get a copy of the rules. They told me I had to mow every Thursday because that and the trash can thing is what typically gets people in trouble. They do a walk by Fridays. If we mowed on Wednesday, it would be too long by then. If we did it Friday, they'd count it as not done. I mow the lawn every Thursday for months and kept my head down. I never even spoke to a neighbor or did anything to draw attention to myself. Around 3/4 of the way through the lease, I get a $400 fine on a Friday with a photo taken nearly in my backyard of my grass with a ruler next to it, which I had just mowed the day before. I'd missed a single tuft of grass behind the AC unit. It was less than half an inch above the rest of it. They'd walked through the yard to the back corner with a ruler to find an issue. They said this puts me on my final warning before eviction unless I could prove it was cut by a specific landscaping company owned by someone in the HOA. Apparently, the HOA only accepts work from them, and it's the only way to reverse a fine. I fought it hard, but ultimately I paid it because I was almost out. Then I started to pay to have it done by that company and kept receipts just in case. Around 2 months or so left in the lease, I get another notice. This time, it's a $600 fine and a formal letter stating that I would be evicted and a picture of my grass fully mowed. No ruler, no indication that anything was really wrong, just a wide shot of my house with cut grass. Since the last time I was told that a receipt proving it was done by them could clear it up. I called the landlord up, offered to show them the copy of the receipt, told them to look at this picture or come by with a ruler, but it was done correctly. I figured it was a misunderstanding, and there's no way I'm actually getting evicted over this. A woman who I'd never spoken with answers the phone and comes in hot from the get-go. I calmly explained the situation to her. She isn't having any of it, cuts me off mid-sentence, says I have to pay $600 today, then they are going to evict me. Refused to look at the receipt or the photo, tells me the buck stopped there and it's my fault for being a bad tenant and to just save my breath and start packing. I told her I didn't recognize her voice and that I had been dealing with someone else. I asked how long she'd been there. 2 days I just started. I asked to speak to someone else who might be more experienced. There's nobody else. We don't need to continue any further than you giving me my money, I started to say. I think that I need to speak to someone else again. Nobody else works here and no one cares what you think. Stop trying to get out of it and be a man. I'm a pretty easygoing guy, but now it was the principle of the thing. I was like, I'm pretty sure someone cares what I think and I know they didn't just hire you and leave you alone in the office. Then go write your opinion on Google or something where we can all go back to ignoring you. If you call back, you're only ever going to talk to me because this isn't worth anyone else's time. I said, oh, don't worry, I will get right on that, and I promise you're going to care in the end. Then this woman started listing off review websites saying that they don't care and no one cares about me. Go to Yelp, go to this place and this place because no one cares. I wrote them all down. Asked for her name, she gave that too, and I wrote that down. Then I told her I'd be in touch. Cue the malicious compliance. This was early in the morning and I had to go to work, but it was an office job that allowed me some leeway in when my work could be done as long as all of it got done before the end of the week. I cleared my whole day. I didn't get a single other thing done. I found every online site that even halfway mentioned them, and I wrote an entire scathing review on every one of them. Not just copy and paste, but fully hashed out in every single place fresh. I even contacted the local news organization, though they never got back to me, but the attempt was made. I ripped them a new one in every method I could. Their website, Yelp, Google, Zillow, every single place that had a message box. I was doing it in bed up to the point I passed out late that night. Most of these places had no reviews or 1 5-star review, so it definitely didn't go unnoticed. 8 a.m., I get a call from the VP of the property company. She'd flown in from Florida, where she was on vacation, to figure out why they suddenly had all these super negative, super specific reviews. I said, oh, so there is someone else who works there. The VP tells me that she's read the reviews and that while she's sorry this was my experience, that this was liable or whatever since I wrote it in a public place, and that they'd sue. I told her it's not liable if it's a true account of my experience, which it was. I added that her new employee even told me the places I could write my opinion because no one was ever going to care what I said. I was just following instructions. They were also evicting me based on something that was demonstrably false, so it's not like I had anything to lose. She got really quiet, then puffs herself up and started getting an attitude, says I'd be hearing from her lawyers soon. I said, oh, great. Were they on vacation too? She hung up. I think it was an hour or two later I get another call from the president of the property company this time. They looked at my receipt for the lawn care and looked at the photo and saw that it was very obviously wrong and were dropping the charge. We were not going to be evicted. Not only that, but they'd straightened it out with the HOA, and the first 2 infractions were also dropped. My $400 infraction was actually only a warning as a first infraction, so I'd be getting that money back. And to top it all off, the wretched woman who told me that no one would ever care what I think was fired by him personally before the call, which is what took the hour or two. Apparently, she was in tears. They asked if I would take down or at least revise some of my reviews so it didn't ruin their company's reputation. I left them all up even after I moved out and never answered another call from them again. Someone's dog may or may not have also taken a dump underneath their doormat and accidentally stomped on it after a 2-hour drive to drop off the last money order. Impossible to tell really, but who cares anyway. The next one is an entitled people story. I have no words to explain how much of a mess this birthday celebration was. My best friend turned 30 yesterday and she wanted a special celebration. Before her birthday and when we were coming up with ideas, she wanted to go to Canada for her 30th. I loved the idea, but I noticed how expensive the hotels came out to be, and when I told my friend we should book right away for a long weekend, I looked at my work schedule, and that Monday that was supposed to be included in the trip suddenly became locked, so I couldn't take off that day. I told my friend, and she came up with a bunch of expensive hotels in Atlanta and Connecticut. We're going to Tokyo in February together, and I didn't want to spend all that money for the hotels she was finding. I told her that it's out of my price range, and she found an expensive hotel in NYC and insisted she'll cover my half. We're both from New York, and honestly, I found it to be a waste of money. I'm from Long Island, and she's from Brooklyn, so there's no need to spend 2 nights in an expensive hotel, but hey, it's her birthday, not mine. We had this plan that from the hotel we can go upstate and enjoy the fall. I go upstate with my parents a lot, so I know which areas are good. I suggested we go to Cold Spring and send her a bunch of Instagram videos. She agreed to the idea and seemed excited. When we were taking the train up, she said Cold Spring doesn't seem to have many restaurants and suggested we go to Beacon for lunch, then on our way back go to Cold Spring. I said that sounds good. When we were exploring Beacon, we got lunch, but all she did was complain that the area was boring. We had a dinner reservation in NYC, so we lost time exploring Cold Spring. I thought she would love Cold Spring because of all the good photos she'll get for Instagram, but the whole time back home she kept commenting that she's a city girl for a reason. I feel like if she wasn't in a rush to get back to NYC, she would have loved Cold Spring. I had plans to get her cupcakes for her birthday, but she didn't like the bakery I thought of getting it from. Then she came up with a few places, which is totally fine. I thought we would be enjoying the dessert at the restaurant, but no, it had to be the hotel. She wanted to get balloons and got upset when I suggested we eat the cupcakes at the hotel. My friend is from Hong Kong, while I'm just a white girl. Sometimes we talk about her culture, and I'm someone that loves to learn about other people's culture. But honestly, I do make the mistake of confusing Hong Kong with mainland China, so that would be things like the language, government, and other things. We do talk a lot about Hong Kong and mainland China, but yesterday I asked my friend if Hong Kong shares the same type of government as China. My friend turned to me and said, in all seriousness, "You just triggered me and my whole country." I quickly apologized and told her I simply don't know these things because I thought I heard Hong Kong is a part of China's government. She continued to tell me that I'm triggering her so much right now and explained the differences. Then later that night, we were hanging out with friends and the topic of China came up. My other friend confused the language style of China and Hong Kong. I said that I know it's confusing, and my friend said, "Yeah, you always confuse my country with China and it really triggers me." She then continued to say, "That's like me confusing and triggering you about North and South Korea." I went quiet after that because she knows my husband is Korean and I'm very prideful towards South Korea. She then went on by saying that the US military needs to get out of South Korea and that the US ruins everything. I didn't say anything at that point and just kept to myself. The whole birthday was a disaster and I don't know if it's my fault. She didn't even thank me for the beautiful gift I got her and for lunch. I'm not looking for a thank you, but I just thought a comment about the necklace would be nice so I can know if she likes it or not. I'm worried about what's going to happen with our trip to Tokyo because she needs to be in control and the littlest thing seems to upset her. I don't know what I did to fail as a friend for her to be so upset during her birthday. She would also go very quiet during the whole weekend, so that made me worried if I'm doing something wrong. The next one is an entitled parent story. A mom from my daughter's 11F middle school just went off on me because I offered to help her out by picking her daughter, 11F, up after school and bringing her to my house where the girls could play. Then things didn't go absolutely to her specifications. Her son's high school is just down the street from my house and gets out an hour later, so this saved her making 2 trips. Our girls are BFFs from elementary but never played outside of school because we live far apart. Ideal, right? Maybe not. Afternoon, I went to get the girls. The battery in my old mom van finally pooped. I can't drive my husband's manual, so he offered to pick up, and I texted the mom what happened, that my husband would be 10 to 15 minutes late. The girls were safe on campus, and my daughter is used to varying pickup times due to my work schedule, and that he would pick up my son from elementary on his way back, an extra 20 minutes total. They would still be back before she came to get her son from the high school. She called me livid because, in her words, this was a serious situation that warranted a call, not a text. That being late for the pickup is not ideal, regardless of the circumstances. That her daughter should not have to spend her time waiting to get picked up when she thought she would be playing at someone's house, should not have to sit in a car an additional 20 minutes for the extra trip of picking up my son, and should not be picked up by a man she doesn't know, in a car she doesn't know. Mind you, my husband had attended school functions for years. He's not a stranger. She must have begun, "I don't appreciate," insert ridiculous expectation, 40 times over the 20 minutes she kept me on the phone. "Yeah, Karen, tell the manager about it." She seemed horrified that I was so chill, especially after she learned my daughter's Apple Watch is Wi-Fi only, meaning I couldn't call her, and that I assumed the girls were mature enough to adapt to a minor change circumstance. She actually challenged me on this, listing all the people she knew who could make calls on their Apple Watch like I didn't know my own daughter's watch that I bought. Not wanting to ruin things for the girls, I stayed chill with her, but mentioned that no one planned my car to break, and some flexibility on all sides was needed. Her answer, "Oh, I see you're calling me inflexible. Well, I want you to know I don't appreciate the passive aggression." She was further infuriated when I mentioned I was only trying to help by picking up her daughter. In her words, "I did not ask for your help. I don't not need your help. This is one of many social engagements I could have made for my daughter this afternoon, and if I had given all the information, I would have made a different choice." She had actually hinted she needed the help before I offered. From my daughter, I understand that this other girl doesn't have many other friends, and that the mother has been really forward about telling my daughter she has to sit with her at lunch, which my daughter doesn't mind doing, but still, I've found it a little weird that this woman has called me on my work days to make plans for our girls, but needs my answer right away because, frankly, you're not the only call on our list. But I figured she doesn't work and has nothing to do during the day but obsess over her daughter's social schedule. When the girls rolled in with my husband, they were, of course, fine, laughing, and hadn't thought anything of the extra time or the drive. But no sooner did they walk in the door than the friend gets a call from her mom and her face falls. For the next several minutes, all I heard was, "I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry, Mom," over and over and over. Apparently, a full minute had passed after I texted the mom to let her know the girls had arrived safely, when they were just pulling into the driveway. And the girl had committed the cardinal sin of not texting her mom when she had been told to do so immediately upon arrival. This just goes to show an overbearing, entitled mom is not the kid's fault, even if she's doing it all for her and is in fact probably making that kid's life hell. Sorry to say I am not willing to have the daughter over again due to the mom's behavior, but I hope she and my daughter will stay friends and that she eventually finds a way out from under her mother's thumb. Anyway.